Welcome to The New Next, a podcast that addresses current events and how they will impact the future. Co-hosted by the inquisitive public speaking champion, Mike McVeigh, and energy, economics, and technology expert, Matt Jensen. Join us as we explore all things energy, economic, tech, and political, and how they will affect our future.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Well, as you can hear, my voice is sexier than ever.
That's funny. Probably me too. So both of us are sleep deprived these days.
Well, I mean, it's just hard to capture sexiness this often. So I'm glad that our listeners get that honor.
Yeah, sure. Some may disagree.
Well, you know, not everybody understands how valuable listening to our voices, no matter how they sound, actually are.
As long as our wives think that we're sexy, yeah.
Yes, that's all who we care about.
And want us around.
So sorry, all you fans. We'll have to take a long, never going to be stamp background check. All right, so we've got a lot of interesting things to cover. I guess the first one, we recently had the Nordstream pipeline exploded, and it's been kind of a little bit of a mystery. And Matt, why should we care?
Well, we've talked a lot about the Nordstream over the last year on this podcast, and it's been it kind of started out as the Nordstream 2 being the point of contention. That was the new pipeline that the permit had been approved for, and then revoked over, geopolitical tensions with Russia from Germany. And, when was that? A month or two ago, it exploded. So Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 are right next to each other. It was a pretty large explosion. It was pretty obvious that there was something amiss there. But Sweden and Denmark have been doing a formal investigation. So kind of the weird thing, after it exploded, the Nord Stream 2 permit had been revoked, and Russia was like, well, Nord Stream 1 isn't suitable to send gas in it, but we can send it through one pipe of Nord Stream 2 still, if you want to prove that. So nobody really knows who did it still at this point. But Sweden and Denmark issued a joint kind of initial report a couple days ago on the 18th, so 2 days before this recording, talking about how they had essentially sent people down to investigate and found evidence of explosives and, clearly basically confirming what we already expected, that this was man-made, or a man-made event.
Yeah, it's funny because when we first were sending this article back and forth, all it was that this mysterious happening, and then just as recently as Friday, the language around it has definitely changed. In fact, the opening line from this Swedish article says, the security police are conducting intensive work in the preliminary investigation surrounding the detonations at the gas pipelines Nord Stream 1 and 2. The investigation shows that this is a case of serious sabotage. And that was definitely not in the article I sent you a few days ago. So
yeah, totally.
It just shows how crazy, everybody's, I mean, we're assuming, or I'm assuming, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but this probably has something to do with Russia and Ukraine.
Well, yeah, surely it's got to, something to do with it. Whether it may or may not be those parties. And if you're going to go to a narrative story, if you're going to think about like a James Bond story too, this is, I don't think there's, I could be proven wrong, but I don't think that there's a illegal criminal organization that has the ability to do terrorism at that depths or would want to. But in the James Bond sort of fanatical storylines of past, this would be a perfect story where basically, kind of an independent terrorist like entity goes in there and blows something up that pins two countries that are already at each other's face together. So you sent me the article before this about the dark ships, and that was really interesting. So they actually spotted basically ships that were trying to camouflage or stealth ships around the time, and they used some interesting technology. So with kind of like the stealth ships, if you're going to just use satellite photos, it's really difficult to necessarily pick out a needle in the haystack. But there's this company that has this cool technology that they use, which is a lot, similar to things that in oil and gas, but they basically send sound waves off the surface and can map out 3D, basically densities, and create figures, essentially. So they spotted some ships heading towards that area around that time using a pretty robust algorithm to sort through tons of information around those days. It was a pretty cool deal. But that kind of kicked off this discussion between us is, well, this is interesting. We finally had some movement here. And it seems like, something that I wouldn't have necessarily thought you find a clear answer on. It's kind of trending that way that you might find a clear answer on there.
Yeah, and you mentioned the whole James Bond thing, and it does seem like it's odd that now that there's an unconfirmed who the next James Bond is, because Daniel Craig's stepping down, this definitely feels like it's attacking the movie industry just as much as the. No, I'm just joking.
Well, the funny thing is, just for us Bond insiders, is the new James Bond is actually going to be a battle between Emmanuel Macron and Justin Trudeau. So we'll see which one pulls it off.
And then watch him pull somebody else out that has nothing to do with that, right?
Yeah, just checking. But I think it's interesting, from the geopolitical sense, but also the fact that the technology that has found this is kind of showing that pretty much anything that we do on the surface that's not covered by a structure, and even a lot of times with that, is basically someone can find it out. So
yeah,
I think that for me, some people might really feel tweaked out by that and stuff, but for me, it is a surveillance state, and I'm not a huge fan of that. But it also kind of, there's a feeling of safety, I guess, that I feel thinking about that, knowing that it's almost like radical transparency, kind of like we had, kind of the agreements that we had up until recently with like Russia and stuff, that they allowed and we allowed them to essentially fly over spy planes to keep tabs on us as a friendly agreement.
Yeah, and when the internet came out, we all kind of made there's that running joke of there's nothing that you can write on the internet that doesn't stay forever. Everything that gets on the internet stays. And now it's very kind of weird. It's not just the internet now. Pretty much anything that happens is almost marked and tracked. So,
well, you should just work on being a good person and not trying to hide sketchy things. So,
hey, I am a good person. I have to do my one or two sketchy things to make me feel like a normal person.
If you would like to learn more about the New Next podcast, find us at thenewnextpodcast.com, where you can suggest a topic you would like for us to cover. If you enjoyed what you heard, share the podcast, tell a friend about it, or rate us with 5 stars.